With that, now we would like to turn to the President's report from CEO Bill Johnson. Bill?
Thank you, Joe. Well, I'm kind of an optimist by nature, and my script here says thank you and good morning. I've struck out, and now good afternoon. This is the final board meeting of our fiscal year, so a good time to look back and then take a look ahead at what's in store for next year. I will apologize in advance for the length, but there is much to cover here. But before I get into that, I want to address a serious matter of safety. We lost a member of our TVA family a few weeks ago, the second loss we've had this year. And I just can't overstate the importance of safety in our daily work and our daily lives. And we heard from Joe this morning, our friend Carl Forsbach had a farming accident. So it's not just our industry or our business, it's everybody. This is so important. Pilot Randy Love of Maryville was lost when his TVA helicopter crashed near the transmission center in Mayfield, Kentucky. Now, Randy was a very seasoned pilot. He was skilled, very experienced, very careful. We're working with the NTSB and the FAA on the accident investigation. We knew Randy as someone who demonstrated care and concern for others. Whether he was navigating the transmission system, showcasing the region for an industrial prospect, and he was just one heck of a salesman in economic development space, or letting a farmer know about a horse that was outside the fence and stranded in the Alabama sun. So, Randy's wife Karen, sons Jacob and Wes are in our thoughts, so if we could start with a moment of silence for Randy. Thank you. So in these reports, I always like to start with the existential question of TVA's purpose, our reason for being. And that is to serve the people of the Tennessee Valley, to make life better. That's something we strive to do every day at TVA. I need to add a few points here. I was surprised to learn this morning that we make excessive profits and don't share them. We are actually a not-for-profit entity owned by you. And when John Thomas provides the budget later, you'll see that revenues equal expenses, and it nets out to zero every year. If you are listening to this or here and want to know how to find us, our agendas are published in the Federal Register. We have 4 board meetings a year, the 3rd week of February, May, whatever month this is, August and November. And they're always the same time, so we look forward to your participation. So our work here is bound by the strategic imperatives of rates, debt, assets, and stewardship. And these imperatives require us to deliver excellent performance in order to maintain low rates, be responsible stewards, live within our means, and manage TVA's power system to deliver reliable, low-cost electricity. So in keeping with those strategic imperatives, we're approaching the end of fiscal year 16 in very good financial health. We've achieved significant cost efficiencies in the past few years. Our generating fleets much more diversified. All of this means lower power prices for customers and consumers. We now rank 15th among the nation's top 100 utilities for industrial rates and 3rd in the Southeast. Our effective retail rates are 31st out of 100 and moving toward top quartile. Our competitive position in rates has improved year over year for several years in a row. So we're managing debt and cash flow well. Our total operating expense is down 7% so far this year compared to last. With a mild winter, our sales and revenues are also below last year at this point, which makes it all the more important that we continue to improve our performance and cost management efforts. So when John Thomas gets up, he'll update on our performance to date. The short version here is that we're more than holding our own in a difficult financial year. And John will also be providing the financial report and budget for 2017. Now, our budget recommendation reflects the plan we've been on for several years here. That is, modest incremental rate increases, and we completed large modernization capital program while simultaneously managing variable costs hard and improving overall financial health. And I think Pete asked for a happy occasion earlier. I'm about to provide you one, Pete. We'll be recommending a 1.5% increase in John's report, an increase we need in order to deliver low-cost, reliable power, make necessary investments in the power system, and continue to manage debt. Now, this board analyzes the impact of proposed rate increases both in terms of competitiveness and affordability. And our rates are both competitive and affordable. The work the employees of TVA have done in managing and reducing operating costs translates into the fact that TVA's total effective rate is, and will continue to be, lower today than it was 5 years ago, even with the incremental increases we've had over the last couple of years. And John will show you some data on this. Now, as we work to strengthen TVA financially, we also recognize that TVA, the local power companies, and really utilities across the nation are facing some challenges. One is the consumer demand for our product is not growing as it once did. Our market is changing, even with healthy economic growth overall. Our growth in power demand has been essentially flat for the past 5 years, and we expect that condition to remain for the foreseeable future. And this is really about a topic we heard a lot about this morning, which is energy efficiency. And we have a vivid example of this in recent history. On July 21st, temperatures across the region here averaged about 96 degrees, and we had the highest summer peak demand since 2012, which was 29,751 megawatts. 9 years ago, on an identical summer day, in terms of weather and other factors that influence demand, in 2007, we peaked at about 32,000 megawatts. So I've never been good at math, but I think that's about 2,225 megawatts, or about 7% below the level 9 years ago, despite pretty good economic growth in the region over that period. So the market is changing, and we and our customers and consumers are working to adapt to these new business conditions. John's financial report will include recommendations for the retirement system, TVA retirement system in 2017. We take our obligations to active and retired employees quite seriously, and we're continuing to work to improve the long-term health of the retirement system without negative impacts on Valley residents. So this budget includes an increased contribution by TVA of $300 million a year to the retirement system and about $80 million in funding for the 401k programs. So later in the meeting, Rebecca Toline will present information on changes to the retirement system that the Retirement System Board has adopted. And later, John Thomas will also recommend updated corporate goals that will further align performance of TVA employees and the business objectives for 2017. On a related note, we had some conversation about retiree medical benefits. I just want to make clear that what we are talking about is moving to the private exchanges, not the public exchanges. The experience in the private exchanges over the last half decade or more has been that more choice, better cost control. So we think this is going to be good, and we share the importance and need not to leave anybody behind. So we won't let that happen. So TVA carries out its mission of service through three main areas: energy, the environment, and economic development. In energy, our efforts to diversify the generating portfolio are paying off. Watts Bar Unit 2 is continuing progress toward commercial operation. When in service, it's more than 1,100 megawatts of carbon-free baseload capacity. That's enough for about 650,000 homes in the valley. At Paradise, the new natural gas units are more than 75% complete. We expect them to begin operation next summer. The Allen plant in Memphis is about 25% complete, scheduled for operation in 2018. There's been some discussion about the cooling water supply for Allen that I think deserves some mention here. As noted this morning, the original concept for that plant envisioned the use of gray water, wastewater, for cooling. And we've changed that to use groundwater instead for several reasons. First, a little bit about project development. When a project is approved by the board, it's approved in a conceptual state. That's because prior to board authorization of project expenditures, we don't make major investments in the project. So we scope it at a high level and later flesh out the project after it's been authorized. So changes to the original concept occur in every significant project during this process. In all such generation projects, we are bound by several legal requirements, including least cost planning for specific resources and the system as a whole. We're also bound by the requirement of producing electricity at the lowest feasible rate and bound by the terms of the National Environmental Policy Act. So in the detailed development of the Allen gas plant, we determined that the use of gray water was not the least cost option due to the quality of the water and the very advanced nature of this technology we're using. This will be one of the most efficient machines in the world. It's also very sensitive. So to use this water, we would have to build a water treatment plant estimated to cost between $12 and $25 million and operated at an O&M cost of more than $6 million per year. We also had significant reliability concerns about relying on this sole source of cooling water. So having determined the gray water was not least cost or the best option in terms of operability, we investigated groundwater. We evaluated purchasing the water from MLGW. We could not get sufficient water from MLGW at peak operating levels, and to do that would require significant upgrades to their system and require the additional construction of multi-million gallon large storage tanks at Allen for supplemental cooling water. The water from MLGW would also require some treatment before we could use it for cooling. Again, this is not the least cost option or the most reliable option, so we decided to use our own wells on site for cooling water. Now, in terms of environmental impact, this has the same impact as getting water from MLGW. In both cases, the water comes out of the same aquifer and in the same amounts, just from different wells. We had the U.S. Geological Survey evaluate the impact of these wells on the aquifer and concluded there is no significant impact. We have also used the identical drilling company that drills MLGW's wells, so we think we're in good shape there. In addition, numerous other industrial facilities in the same area use groundwater for their processes. So given the fact that the groundwater options have the same environmental impact, which in neither case is significant, the issue came down to the least cost option and best reliability parameters. And these are factors governed by the TVA Act. Now, we will be purchasing substantial amounts of water from MLGW for various purposes. We'll also be burning the biogas from the Memphis Public Works treatment plant nearby. As I said, that plant's about 25% complete, will be in operation in 2018. Elsewhere in the power system, coal generation continues to be important to the power supply, although declining significantly. We're investing more than $1 billion in clean air equipment in Gallatin and Shawnee coal plants. But cost-effective renewable energy is also an important part of our diverse portfolio. In 2015, 13% of the electricity we generated or bought was from renewables, including hydro. And several speakers mentioned this morning. In the spring, we issued a request for information to learn more about the availability and cost of renewable resources that are in the region or can be delivered here. We're currently completing environmental reviews for a total of about 50 megawatts of solar power from proposed facilities in Hardeman and McNairy counties in West Tennessee. And we're also evaluating smaller renewable projects that are directed by the region's local power companies. Our pilot program for these, called Distributed Solar Solutions, was well received by the local power companies in 2016, and we recommend offering the program again in 2017. These smaller solar projects are valuable in helping TVA and the local power company expand our understanding of the role renewables can play in the future power supply. And our local power company partners have a very important role in that market for distributed generation. It's critical that TVA and our customers are aligned as we develop and deliver products and programs. And Greg Williams mentioned this, but this is the reason we recently established a business unit focused specifically on distributed energy resources in the future marketplace. So this group will be responsible for business development, pricing and contracts, technology innovation, and our energy efficiency, demand response, and renewable programs and products. The team will be led by Jay Stowe, who many of you know, currently the CEO and president of Huntsville Utilities. So I don't know if my stock in the local power community went up or down with this move, but we're glad to have Jay with us, and he'll still be with y'all, so don't worry. In the environment, we work to protect the region's natural resources, including air quality. TVA's carbon footprint has become much smaller in recent years, and air quality in the region is now the best it's been since scientists began measuring it routinely. We've added emission control equipment to some coal units, closed others, and we're improving how we manage coal combustion residuals. As was noted this morning, we recently concluded an extensive environmental review on how best to manage coal ash impoundments generally across our system and at 10 coal plants sites. Now, the rule for how this work is to be done are written and interpreted by the Environmental Protection Agency. And over the past year, this review included a great deal of public input and perspective. We concluded that dewatering and permanently and safely capping the impoundments in place at the 10 sites is the best option. And the Environmental Protection Agency has specifically concurred with this in writing. With your permission, I will read a paragraph of a letter from the EPA that we've received. Coal combustion residuals are byproducts produced from burning coal and include fly ash, bottom ash, boiler slag. I'll skip the rest of that. 2009, TVA outlined a plan to eliminate wet storage of CCR at its plants and convert all wet, fly ash, bottom ash, and gypsum operations to dry storage. The EPA rated the draft EIS as LO, indicating we lacked objections to TVA's plan for impoundment closures. The EPA has again reviewed both parts of the final EIS, including the site-specific closure plans, and concluded that TVA's response to the EPA's comments made on the draft document are acceptable. Overall, EPA concurs with the TVA preferred alternative to close identified facilities in place according to the CCR rule. You have here a picture of the John Sevier site where we have finished about half of the work and still have half the done. On the left side of the picture, you see a closed and capped in place impoundment. On the right side of the picture, you see the beginning of the coal layer we put on the bottom before we refill and then cap and close. So we've had some experience with this. Clay layer, what did I say? Oh, coal, clay, it's a Freudian slip. A clay layer where we'll put the coal ash after we get the layer done. So we have had good experience here, and the results are good, and we think we're in a good place. Also, to protect the region's natural resources, we manage the Tennessee River system for multiple benefits, including recreation. And we wish that Mother Nature had been a little kinder to us this summer. Much of the region is experiencing moderate drought conditions, so we're carefully managing the available water in keeping with established policies for reservoir operations. The reservoirs are public resources that we manage for the people of Tennessee Valley. And we've had a lot of comments this morning about floating homes, and I expect that we will continue to get those. People on all sides of this have strong views. We had a lot of input from sources when the board adopted the policy, including input from the Regional Resource Stewardship Council. Our concern and our commitment is to manage public resources for the greatest benefit of all members of the public. And as you might recall, we are tasked by the board with coming back in November with standards and the regulatory structure we will use to manage these homes. In the area of economic development, TVA electricity powers the businesses, homes, schools, and industries of our region. We also work directly with customers, economic development agencies, local governments, and others across the region to bring good jobs to the valley and keep them here. So through June of this fiscal year, our combined efforts with our partners helped attract and retain almost 65,000 jobs and more than $7 billion in business investments in the region. Last week, we and our partners in Mississippi announced the certification of a new mega site near Columbus in the Golden Triangle. We announced another new site several months ago in Huntsville, Alabama. And these mega sites, which are really large tracts that are truly shovel-ready for major projects, have been a very successful tool for economic development here. Companies like Toyota, Volkswagen, Steel Dynamics, Packard, just several of the major companies on those sites. So we look forward to putting more people to work on those new sites. Another thing we do that we take some pride in is our work in the Federal Energy Services Program. Military bases drive the economy in many of our valley communities, provide thousands of jobs, and support commerce in every business sector. So our Federal Energy Services Program helps military bases continue to be vibrant assets for the region and the nation. Since 1988, hundreds of bases around the country have been closed through the Base Realignment and Closure, or BRAC process, which the Department of Defense uses to review, reorganize, and close inefficient or ineffective military installations. So our employees work with our Valley military bases to improve energy and water efficiency and to use more renewable energy. We've completed more than 30 projects that have saved the Department of Defense more than $100 million. So for our military customers, that means better lighting, more efficient heating and cooling, lower energy costs, and a stronger position at review time. So for example, in the Defense Department's 2005 review, Redstone Arsenal gained more than 4,600 jobs that were transferred from other facilities, which a big economic win for North Alabama. Our chair, Joe Rich, had an instrumental role in that. So we're proud to serve our military customers, and proud to keep them in the Valley. A very large number of TVA employees are veterans, and so we tend to appreciate the service of all who defend our nation. So a little history here. In 1933, when Congress established the TVA, the purpose was for developing the natural resources of a 7-state region in an integrated fashion, so that the region's natural resources would benefit the greatest number of citizens, that public power would be delivered at the lowest feasible cost, and the region's standard of living would rise. The legislation to form the TVA was introduced by Senator George Norris of Nebraska. Just a political note, he was a Republican from Nebraska who campaigned openly for Franklin Roosevelt. Not much of that these days, but he was an interesting guy, and this was really the beginning of quite a fundamental change in the quality of life in this region. And many of us had the great fortune to be reminded how significant that change was recently. This is the 80th anniversary of the completion of the first dam the TVA built, aptly named Norris Dam. It's also the 80th anniversary of the document that outlined TVA's responsibility for flood control, navigation, and affordable electricity in the valley. So to mark this milestone, members of the family of Senator Norris and President Roosevelt visited the region, and Norris Dam was named to the National Register of Historic Places. For 2 days, on July 29th and 30th, we invited members of the public to celebrate with us, to come and visit Norris Dam and the powerhouse, and to learn more about TVA. So we hoped a couple people would come, share part of their weekend with us, maybe a couple hundred, maybe 1,000. By the end of the second day, on the order of about 30,000 people had come to Norris Dam. So we were gratified, we were humbled, and we were literally overwhelmed. Many people brought their children to see power production, water management, and natural resources all at the same site. Others had family members who had worked on the construction of the dam. Some of them were people whose farms were taken to create the reservoir. One gentleman that I met recalled visiting the dam when he was 8 years old to see President Roosevelt close the gates. And in 1936, President Roosevelt himself gave that order for the gates to be closed. And in giving that order, he called Norris Dam, quote, a practical symbol of better life and greater opportunity for millions of citizens of our country. And that continues to be TVA's charge today, to enable a better life and greater opportunity for the people we serve. So as we end one fiscal year and approach the beginning of another, we'll continue to carry out that mission to the best of our abilities. Thank you, Mr. Chair. That concludes my report. I'd be glad to take any questions.